Welcome back. The time's 20 minutes past 8, and you're still tuned into your home of humanitarian journalism right here on Salam Media. The name of the show is News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidir, and I will be kicking off the show by turning our focus to one of the most pressing humanitarian issues of our time, the civil war in Sudan. And, despite the shocking scale of the violence and suffering, the conflict has largely been overshadowed by other global issues, leading to what some are calling an unforgivable silence, with an estimated 16,000 lives lost and nearly 10 million people displaced. The plight of the Sudanese people deserves a bit more attention than it's currently getting right now. And joining us to unpack the complexities of this crisis is Sudanese journalist Saeed Abdalla, a seasoned journalist, I should mention, who'll help us explore the origins of this conflict, the current humanitarian situation, and what steps need to be taken to foster peace and support those affected. And he's joining us via our virtual platform. Brother Saeed, Jazakallah so much for giving us your time. Always a pleasure having you here on Salam Media. Really appreciate it.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me.
I think first and foremost, I think before you are a journalist, you are a Sudanese national, and when you hear this rhetoric that there's almost a seemingly effective campaign to ignore what's currently happening in Sudan, and to shift focus from it, whether it's deliberate or not, but it is happening. How does that make you feel? That one of the most pressing global issues of our time right now, a humanitarian crisis, by every scale and every measure, is largely going unnoticed. And as a Sudanese personally, what does that make you feel? What do you feel? And are you concerned that for such a long time, the world is not paying as much as attention as it needs to Sudan and what's currently happening in that part of the world?
Of course, I'm very concerned about what's going on there, and I'm very concerned about the situation because it's getting worse every day. The thing is, like, there's two factors here. First, the local factor and the international factor. I think the local factor is still playing a significant role in blocking the humanitarian aid to get there. There is a humanitarian aid at the moment in Sudan, even though it's not enough, but there is some of it. There's an issue now, like we for this humanitarian aid to get to the people in need. Yes, some of it gets there, but due to the war and due to the atrocities, we find like there's difficulties to get to the people there. So that now it's in like there's certain places in the country like in famine, and there's certain others are in like suffering from hunger, etc. When it comes to the international part of the issue, I think, yes, Sudan has been forgotten from the international community. And it's not this lack of uh, attention to Sudan and lack of attention to the humanitarian crisis. Even though now this is one of the largest and one of the worst humanitarian crises that's the world is watching in front of before our eyes. And I think it made me feel like, yes, there's differences when we look at the world, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in Sudan. There's different level when it's like I don't think that's the world now look at what's going on in Sudan and like the same way they look at what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Gaza, even though like there's justified like view on both wars, but the war in Sudan still needs like a lot of attention and needs to be dealt with as soon as possible because that will expand and will exacerbate the suffering for people, and it's still going to just affect the whole region and maybe like a lot of African countries as well.
Mm. And I think you mentioned something very, very important. The fact that what's currently happening in Sudan is not viewed, with the same lens as what's happening in maybe Ukraine or what's happening in Gaza, and I think most recently what's happening in Lebanon. Do you think the fact that what's happening in Sudan, and maybe you can just unpack a bit more for our viewers that might not quite understand some of the intricacies of what's happening in Sudan, the fact that this is essentially a civil war. There's not, a foreign aggressor coming into the country and trying to cause instability and, mass murder genocide campaigns like we're seeing in Gaza. But these are, essentially the same people with different agendas. And maybe that's why the world is not taking as much heed because you're a sovereign country, Sudan, and you need to sort out your own issues. Do you think that maybe plays a part? But maybe if you can maybe just start by unpacking the two warring parties and why exactly that, since 2023 they've been at loggerheads with each other and having so many casualties as a result thereof.
Uh, the war erupted in 15th of April 2023. That's erupted between two factions, which is the Sudanese armed forces against the rapid support forces. And this is a paramilitary. The rapid support forces used to be like part of the Sudanese armed forces, and this due to the what what I call it is a power hunger at that time. What I call it is just like uh, fighting for power between these two general and two leaders, which is the lead of the SAF, Abdul Fattah al-Burhan, the lead of RSF, Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo. These two leaders caused the country to get to the point where like we have displacement, we have famine, we have like 18 people, 18,000 people died and exacerbate the crisis in Sudan. Now, with after that, now like every part, every like the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces trying to claim and trying to dominate as much as they can on the ground in order to get to the point where when they come to the negotiation table, they have like the on say they have like the stronger position to apply their political needs and stuff. So I think when it comes to the issue of of the of the war, it's definitely in turn like it's a local place. It used to be like one thing, and this the same place, the same leaders were participating in the genocide that was happening in Darfur between the year 2023 and 2025, and they caused the same thing. But funny enough, at that time, the international community playing a critical role, and it's very fast. It was very like on point, trying to just like act with sanctions, with uh, uh, international institution resolutions to face the issue there. But now we see like still. A little has been done, and still the war is moving from areas to areas, starting in Khartoum, the capital city of Sudan, and Darfur, that was the area I think the world is very familiar with. And it's been going the conflict and the wars has it's been going on there for a while now, and a different areas as well, in new areas in Sudan, like that's the center of Sudan, the center states, and the part of the west of Sudan, and we've seen that the RSF has dominated in certain states, and SAF are now like these Sudanese armed forces. I mean, like also controlling the others, and this led us to only one fact, which is I think everyone needs to recognize that there is no military end for this war.
Mm, 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 Mm. Before I let you go, what's the latest right now? I think the last time I got an updates from Sudan was the fact that the Sudanese army has taken control of some of the key bridges and launched an offensive against the RSF. Can you provide us the latest updates on the military situation, particularly in two very, very key areas, being Khartoum and also Omdurman?
Yes, that was in the capital a few days ago. It started, and I think it coincide with the General Burhan visit to the UN Assembly. That's just, I think that the man is a commander in chief of the Sudanese army, and he went to the UN. He wants to act like a president of the Sudanese Sovereign Council, which is a civil body. And I think he wants to play in the both, like he just wants to show that he's still like, even though I'm standing in front of you, like we have the upper hand. And I think the media is playing a bigger role. And to be fair here, uh, what we saw this before, like since the war erupted, we saw it few times, and what we've seen was just a flash in the pan rather than a significant change on the ground. And we've seen this before. Usually it's short-lived. I don't think it's going to be last for a long period. And but what everyone should understand, this, like people in Sudan, especially people in Khartoum, will some would say this can help with the humanitarian crisis, because in certain areas in the capital, given the atrocities committed by the RSF, uh, people will try to move to the areas of where the Sudanese armed forces is, because they can at least like get some help, some. But with the atrocities of RSF, it's very difficult to get that. And I think
Mhm.
in order to deal with this, you don't have to just do this with more action on the ground, but you need to stop the war itself, and find a peace negotiation, that rather than expanding the suffering of the
Mm.
people, and further destruction the cities.
Mm, mm, mm. And speaking of finding a peace negotiation, in your opinion, what do you think are some of the most critical steps that need to be taken both locally and internationally to foster peace in Sudan? And you also mentioned, I think, the involvement and the impact that this conflict essentially will have on the region. Um, what role do you think regional actors such as Egypt, maybe Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, to a large extent, play in this ongoing conflict, and how do their own personal interests further complicate the situation?
Yeah, indeed, it becomes a proxy war now in Sudan. Like the Sudanese armed forces have their own classical supporters, and the UAE, and the like the Egypt and Iran, and etc. And the RSF, we saw that well documented that the UAE is supporting the RSF, and and all these countries have been like trying to mediate as well. So it becomes a real proxy war now in Sudan. And the problem is, like, we need to see this from two aspects as well, like the local aspects, the where it's like it's very complex now. We saw that tribes are behind uh, this faction or that faction. We saw that there's fragmentation between the civilian bodies as well, and there's like more of misinformation. So it's very complex. Even the war, if it stops today, I think we still need way more time to just to fix the negative impact of this war. And I think the first thing locally, we need to have like a, a one civilian body that call for stopping the war, and find a political path to just to go out of this crisis and stalemate. And I think, from international point of view, I think the international community should first is stop funding these two factions and stop uh, just giving arms to these two warring parties, and put pressure on them to get to the ceasefire and to come to the negotiation table. And I think with more pressure, more focus on the issue, we can get to that point where when we get to the ceasefire, at least like for a certain period of time, then we can just take it, level it up, and learn from the experience that we had from the negotiation process that we had in the past, whether in Geneva or in Jeddah or other places. So in this way, I think we can create an environment that at least can bring some hope and some confidence to the people on the ground.
All right. Thank you so much, Said, for sharing your insights on this ongoing conflict in Sudan, one that I think is very, very important, and for giving us your perspective. I think it's very, very invaluable that we try to understand this complex situation better. But we're going to leave it here for now. We really appreciate you joining us on News and Views.
Thank you so much.
There you go. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, News and Views does continue. But before you go, I want you to Google something very, very quickly for me: psychic numbing and what it means. And I think maybe we might find answers for why this war and this conflict, which has affected millions in Sudan, has largely gone unnoticed. Psychic numbing. Look it up as we go to this quick break.